What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Free to Be, and today we're going to be talking about how to negotiate like a pro. Do you want to know how to negotiate better? Is that something you're struggling with? Well, if you are, you've come to the right place, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. Let's get started. All right, now as always, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and do me a favor and just click the subscribe button down below. We cover financial literacy on this channel, and you're not going to want to miss any other content. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and just click the subscribe button down below. It's the one in red. And if you're not new, thanks again for coming back. Okay, so negotiating is a big part of our lives. It's something that we will all inevitably have to face at some point. Whether we're buying a new car or, negotiating a salary, whether it's a new position or selling an item on eBay or the internet or a garage sale, whatever it may be, at some point in our lives, we're going to be faced with a negotiation. And I have some kind of tips and suggestions on how to become better at it. And you're going to want to watch the whole video because a few of them might catch you off guard. Specifically the one that I think is the most important, which we'll cover a little bit further down in this video, a little bit towards the end. So if you do want to skip through because you think you're a pro already, go ahead and get to the end of this video. But if not, you're not going to want to miss any of these tips. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to always want to aim high in your negotiations. You want your starting point to be as high as possible because it is a give and take, and you are going to have to come down and concede a little bit and give off of that starting point that you initially come in on. But you want to make sure that that's as high as possible without being ridiculous, right? If you're selling a chair that's worth $40, you don't want to go in and start the negotiation at $150. That's not going to work. But if the chair is worth $40, maybe you want to start at $50 and kind of back down to get closer to that $40 number. Because if you're going to start lower, if you start, for example, at 40 or at 35, because that is a good deal, the negotiation is going to go back and forth because the other person is going to want to get a deal as well. And so you're going to end up selling it for a lot less than 40. So aim high in your negotiations, whether it's for a salary, again, whatever it is, always aim high. Okay, so to work in line with aiming high, you got to also know your bottom line. And that's the second tip, is to understand or how far you're willing to go before reaching a decision, before coming to an agreement with the other party. Know your bottom line. For the same example, if you have a $40 chair and you are willing to part with it for $30, let's say, just know that going in. You don't want to be in a situation where you're caught off guard through the negotiation and then you're kind of making that decision on the fly. You kind of always want to know where where you'd be happiest at and also where you'd be satisfied and content with walking away. You kind of just want to identify what that spectrum is for you and kind of where you'd be happiest, what the bottom is, what the top is, and where you'd be okay with, settling on a negotiation with the other party. Now, the next tip I have for you is to not panic. This is especially true if you're going up against someone who is really confident, who is very good at negotiating, because they're more likely to be able to articulate their position a little bit better. They're going to be able to convince you a little bit why their price, their position is the better one to go with. And what you're not going to want to do, you're not going to want to panic. You're going to want to stay calm. You're going to want to remember what your position is. You're going to want to remember what if you're selling something, what your price is. If you're negotiating a salary, what that is in mind. Just don't panic. Keep it even as much as possible, because ultimately, a cooler mind, someone who's focused, someone who's not panicked, relaxed in the negotiation is going to do a lot better. So if it's your first negotiation, go in there like it's your 100th. Just always, be confident in yourself. Understand what you're looking to do and what you're looking to accomplish out of the negotiation, and always just keep that on the front of your mind so that it doesn't slip away and you don't start panicking. All right, so the next tip I have for you is to think of creative ways to kind of close a deal. So for example, if you are, at a garage sale and you are selling items and someone's negotiating with you, and you don't necessarily want to take less money, think of a way to maybe, say bundle in another item and be like, hey, look, if you get these two items, I can do this at a discount for you. If you're selling something online, maybe offer free shipping. But think about things that aren't necessarily involved in terms of the money side of the negotiation, something that also adds value to the other party. And don't be afraid to kind of be creative with the ideas and just throw them out there because you'll be surprised how often those could work. Those could be the differentiating factor in closing a deal or just walking away. So think outside the box a little bit, be creative. Don't be afraid to bring those creative ideas to the negotiation table. And that's really just what I mean by that, is just think outside the box here. And kind of hand in hand with that goes, bringing the value, selling the value of the item, of whatever is being negotiated. Don't think so much about the money. Be creative when you're trying to close it, but also when you're articulating your point, when you're trying to represent your position in the negotiation, think of the value that you bring. Think of the value the item brings. Again, if it's for a job, kind of convey the value that you bring as a person that would make it worth the X amount of salary you're getting. If you're trying to sell, back to that example of a chair, trying to explain the value of that chair. You need this chair. This is the most comfortable chair that you're going to find out there. It's really going to be good for your posture. To try to present the value to the other party, because that can go a long way getting the deal done as well. All right, now the next thing to remember here with negotiating anything is to think of it as a we process and not a me process. And what that means is you have to remember that in a negotiation, it's usually two or more parties. So this is not just about you. It's not a me thing. It's not an I thing. It's a we thing. You want both parties to end up being, happy and satisfied when they're walking away. For the most part, that's usually the best way to negotiate. And if you do think about the other party or parties involved, it goes a long way for them as well, because look, if you factor in their consideration and their opportunity, their time, their money, all this, if you factor that in, they're also going to then be willing to kind of take your position into consideration as well, and they'll be a lot more receptive to working with you and trying to figure out the best route for both of you to proceed. So it goes a long way. Definitely think of that approach of, look, we're in this together. This is a negotiation, but for the most part, it shouldn't be hostile. Both parties are there for the same kind of reason, whether if it's selling something, one's trying to dispose of the possession and the other person's trying to get it. Like, you have some common ground there. So don't be as hostile as you think, you need to be in a negotiation. That's not usually the best approach. Be willing to work with the other person, keep their kind of goals and agenda in mind as well, and they'll be a lot more receptive to solutions. If it's a creative option to close the deal, whatever it may be, they'll be a lot more receptive to that. So just keep in mind that this is a we process. There's more than one person involved in this whenever you're negotiating anything, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and now for the most important tip that I can give you in negotiating anything, and that is just to listen. A lot of times we'll go into a negotiation and we will just not be focusing on, listening to what the other person has to say, because we are so steadfast in getting our, objective accomplished that we're just not listening. And if you do listen, if you take the time to listen, you will be surprised how many times something may be important for the other party that's not really important to you, so you don't have to take as hard of a stance on it. Something you'd be willing to concede because it's just not important to you, which will go a long way and present some good faith to the other party or parties. So really just try to listen, be open, listen to what the person has to say, listen to what their concerns are, listen to what value they bring, and work off of it that way. But you have to be open to listening. If you just shut somebody off and try to be hostile about it, it's just not going to be a good way to negotiate anything. You're not really going to get what you want to get out of it. And finally, guys, remember, when you're negotiating, this is not personal. For the most part, these are business type transactions. Sure, maybe in a contentious, dispute between family members when they're, separating, if it's a husband and wife going through a divorce, whatever the case may be, maybe in that circumstance it could become personal. But for the most part, negotiations are not personal. So check the ego at the door. Remember what you're there for. Keep your, objective in mind. Keep it focused. This is a business type transaction. Both parties involved want to make sure that they get what they came looking for. And so there's no real room for an ego at the table. This should never get to the point where you're insulting someone else personally, because that's not what negotiating or good negotiating is about. So just keep that in mind. Remember all these tips. And if you do, you'll be pretty successful at negotiating. Again, there's no way we can go through our entire lives without having to do that. And if you know how to do it well, if you know how to negotiate well, you will oftentimes walk away feeling like you've done good by yourself and you've gotten a good deal, whatever that deal may be. and you've really learned to respect the other person and make sure that they kind of get the best thing that's available to them as well. So that really, if you can, help it, if you're really a good negotiator and you've had an opportunity to negotiate a lot, you're going to have a situation where both parties, or whatever that many parties there are going to walk away, both of them equally satisfied. And that's ultimately the telltale sign of a good negotiator, someone who understands how to negotiate for whether it's, the sale of goods or a new job, salary, whatever it may be. That's really how you could tell someone knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing. All right, guys, well, that's all I have this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you like this type of video, if you want to see more of this type of content on the channel, just go ahead and let me know down below. And again, if you haven't done so already, guys, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications, and we'll see you next time.